Bonjour, bienvenue à la 12e semaine du 52, 25, 52 semaines de cinéphiles. Je m'appelle Matt. Cette semaine, j'ai parlé du cinéma français. Commencez notre premier fil à pêche. Parfait. That's as much French as I'm going to speak here today. Welcome, as I just mentioned, in France. In France? No, I'm in America. In French. This week, as I mentioned before, is French Week on 5225, French cinema. I'm going to apologize ahead of time, number one, for any mispronunciations I do, but I will say that if I do pronounce anything correctly, it's thanks to YouTuber Julian Miquel, Miquel, who coached me through via his videos on how to say some of these names and things. So I do apologize ahead of time if I mispronounce anything or if I forget how to pronounce the thing. I would also like to say I am dealing with a killer migraine right now. So this is probably going to be pretty short. I'm probably going to try to buzz right through these. I've said that before and it has not been true, but oh man, I feel like I'm in the yards. And although I did make videos while I had the flu, it's much easier to cut out, little places where I'm coughing or whatever. But I really don't want to cut out places where I'm yardsing on myself. So that is the disclaimer here. Hopefully we get some good discussion out of this, but it might be really short. Couldn't even be bothered to do my hair. It's just up in a nice French ponytail. It's not French. It's just a regular ponytail. But let's start with our first movie, the very first film that I watched this week, and it's actually the first film that got me into French cinema, and that is Amelie, directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet. Jeunet? See, I've already forgotten, and I used to be able to say it. Jean-Pierre. Directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet. Now, as I mentioned, this is the first movie that got me into French cinema, like a lot of people my age, because when Amelie came out in 2001, the French cinema hadn't really taken America by storm the way, at least not since like the French New Wave, which we'll talk about that here in a little bit. This actually introduced a lot of people, a lot of millennial cinephiles to what French cinema was and what it could be. So the importance that Amelie has on my film journey just can't be overstated, because a lot of the kind of movie fan I am and the kind of thing that I looked for at this time in my life, which is pretty formative time in my life as far as cinema goes, because I did worked in a movie theater, and then I worked in the video store right after that, which I stayed at the video store for 8 years until video stores just stopped being a thing. But the profound effect this film has on my film journey just can't be overstated, and I'm very, very happy to find that 25 years later, I still find this movie incredibly charming. It's also a very magical film, and I think that's one of the things that drove me to it in the first place. I'm a big fan of magical realism. I'm a big fan of characters who kind of break off into their imagination every once in a while, which happens a lot with Amelie in this film. It's also incredibly engaging. I find start to finish that it's always keeping me interested and keeping me interested in what's happening on the screen, keep me engaged in what Amelie is up to in this film. I know that there are some people close to me who found the second half a little too slow, and I could see that because it kind of shifts gears into this more romantic plot line after that. But for me, it doesn't feel slow, and it works because it feels like the rest of the first half of the movie is all actually building up to this, and this is the payoff for what's happening in the first half of the movie, and that actually is very, very engaging for me. So I do very much enjoy that. But yeah, the fact that it still had this profound effect on me today as it did the first time, and I've watched it a few times, but not in a long time. Like, it's been a couple decades probably, or yeah, a couple decades probably since I've seen it. And to go back to it and see how much it still had this effect on me was pretty amazing. I did enjoy the time I spent with it this time. Of course, there are some things in this that kind of transcend the movie. They have become part of culture, or they became part of culture for a while. There is a subplot in here where she sends her dad's lawn gnome around the world with a friend of hers, and he keeps getting letters with the gnome in different places in the world. Well, a pretty famous here in America, at least, vacation planning site used that imagery after this movie came out, of the traveling gnome who would go to all kinds of different places, and that is directly a reference to this film. Hey, editing Matt here. I just needed to interject here that after recording this, I did notice that, or I looked it up, and the traveling gnome thing is just a thing in France. But it originated, I think, in the 1970s. So this movie did not originate that. However, the Travelocity traveling gnome, "Where's My Gnome" is the campaign, was almost certainly inspired by Amelie, because it started right after this, and that movie is what introduced American audiences to the traveling gnome. So, and this is a American company, so it definitely was inspired by that. But the idea of the traveling gnome has been happening apparently since the 1970s in France. All right, that's all. Back to the show. Also, this is kind of where the world learned about, or came to know, Audrey Tautou. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but she went on to have an okay, not great, American film career. I think casual viewers would probably know her best from The Da Vinci Code, but yeah, for me, it's she's had a better career in France since then, but. This is kind of where it kicked off, and this is where a lot of us really fell in love with her. The character of Amelie is one of the best things about this film, and that is because she's such a sweet character. She's such a interesting and understandable character, and I love, this film heavily uses voiceover narration, which I think is fine. A lot of people will look back on it and go, "No, dude, people consider that lazy," and I think use of it when it doesn't need to, just because you're being a little lazy, maybe is a problem. But I think that people take that idea a little bit too far and treat it as though anytime you use narration, it's lazy, which it's not. There are plenty of places where narration is absolutely useful and absolutely valid and makes complete sense. And this is one of those places, because this disembodied voice narrator telling her story, and then her interacting with the audience as the story is being told, it all coalesces into that magic realism that happens within her imagination, which I think is great. But yeah, the character is so very sweet until she isn't, because sometimes she does some might consider pretty shitty things, but she does them to pretty shitty people. So it's okay as an audience. We're okay with it, because one of the fun plots, that's really the plot of the first half of the movie, and really the thing that leads into the rest of it, that kind of she continues in the rest of it, but more singularly focused in the rest of it than in the first half. But is that she finds this box of old stuff from like the 1950s in her apartment, and goes through a process of trying to figure out who it belongs to. And then once she does that, she realizes, hey, I like how this feels. I'm going to start interfering in other people's lives. And that's basically what happens as she goes on to mess with other people's lives, whether they want it or not, sometimes for the good and sometimes, changing out their light bulbs in their house while they're not there so that they are annoyed, and just because they're a real dick to the person who works for them, which is fun to watch. I think that the character is so good. She's such an interesting and fun character to follow that for me, this movie doesn't ever get stale while I'm watching it. It doesn't ever get boring for me, but I understand that once it kind of shifts a little bit, the pacing kind of shifts a little bit, which again, I think works, but for some people it might not work quite as well. And I can see that. So I definitely do understand that point of view. But that's all I'm going to talk about Amelie right now. If it's been a while since you've seen it, watch it. If you saw it and you didn't really care for it, I say watch it again, see how you feel. And you know who I'm talking to. Two of my biggest viewers have both claimed that. Although, Carly, look at your Letterboxd review. It's not you didn't dislike it as much as you remember disliking it, or maybe you did and you're lying on it. But I don't know. But you guys give it another watch. I think that I think you'll enjoy it a little bit more with having with the context of the film, having already seen it before and kind of knowing what you're in for. I think you will enjoy it more, or maybe you won't, but let me know. Next we go from one of my first and most influential French films to one of the first and most influential French films of all time, and that is A Trip to the Moon from 1902 by Georges Méliès. Not much to say about this one, just because if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's like 14 minutes long. And I actually watched this a long time. I've actually seen it a few times. I watched it a while. I can't even remember the context which I watched it before, like streaming was a thing, or at least I watched some of it because I have seen that imagery before for years. And then it kind of came on streaming and I watched it again, and I had actually rated it a little bit lower than I would have today, which I know because once I rewatched it, I re-rated it. I'd even given it like 4 stars. And I think past Matt wasn't considering the magnitude of the film, because I don't know exactly why I rated it only 4 stars versus 5 stars. But I can say that when I consider the influence this film had, when I consider the effort it took, the incredible production value that they got in 1902, which was very, very impressive. It doesn't look like it's on a set. I mean, from 2025 eyes, yeah, it does look like it's on a set, but unlike a lot of those things, it doesn't feel like a set. It feels like another world, like it feels so fantastical and interesting, and so much went into the production of this that I'm just like, man, I can't rate it anything other than a masterpiece, 5 stars, just because for its time, it's so incredibly well crafted and it's so incredibly well realized, and in a way that it's really surprising today when you look back at it. Not from today's standards, of course, but when you look back at the types of movies that were being made back then, this one feels so much richer because so much went into it. I mean, you can read about it. I recommend everybody go read about the making of this movie, because it was hard. There was a lot that went into it because they were doing something that had never been done before, which was crafting this sci-fi. And it's not the first sci-fi movie. I think it's one of the first. It's considered by some to be one of the first sci-fi movies, but it's not the very first sci-fi movie. It's not the very first French movie. It's nothing like that. But as far as innovation and the effort it took and the production value in it, it's incredible considering the time. So I'm not going to talk too much about it because there's not much to talk about. It's a 14-minute movie where they go to the moon, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen the image of the rocket having hit the moon's eye, and I'm sure you're familiar with that, but kind of I recommend watching the rest of it, because that's not the impressive thing. That's kind of the that's iconic image, but it's not really it's not the whole movie. There's so much that goes into what they did in this film. And so if you've never seen it, go watch it. It's really an incredible experience, and short, so you won't have to spend too much time thinking about it, or spend too much time uh, out of your day to enjoy this masterpiece. So I'm going to go on to another movie. Now, those other two were rewatches. I'd seen those before, obviously, as I mentioned, and this one was a rewatch, but I'd only seen it once, and I'd seen it a long time ago, and I can't tell you how long ago. I don't know exactly. I don't know how complete what I had seen was either, because I don't think it was like, I don't think I rented it from a store or anything like that. Maybe I saw clips of it at school. I don't remember exactly the circumstances in which I watched part or all of this before. But the movie is Passion of Joan of Arc, from 1928 by Carl Theodor Dreyer. And I can tell this was before I really had, that if I had seen it before, it must have been before I really was analyzing films in the way that I did later in my late teens and early 20s, or even if I didn't truly recognize the importance of this film, or the craft of this film, because when I watched it this time, I was not expecting. I knew it was very highly rated. It's considered one of the best films from the silent film era, and I knew that. But when I went to watch it, I did not expect anything new. I didn't expect to be moved too much. Number one, because Joan of Arc is kind of an interesting figure in my life, because as I've mentioned many times on here, I used to be very religious, and I am no longer very religious. I am no longer religious at all. And so the story of Joan of Arc has always been very interesting to me. Because like there's this part of me that kind of grew up in that tradition, in the tradition of religion and believing the stuff that's like that sees her as kind of this amazing figure. There's also the skeptical part of me that is no longer religious, that says what was really happening there with her. Should I even dignify her story with attention, stuff like that. There's the feminist part of me that's like it doesn't matter what she says or did. She was treated horribly simply because she was a woman. Well, partially because she was a woman in man's clothes and doing man things. And then there's the martyrdom side of it. And I grew up in an era where, or at least my teenage years were kind of in an era where martyrdom was a big deal in the Christian community, because Columbine had happened, and they fed us this story about how they were attacking Christians, which I think we came out of that finding out later that the truth was not exactly how the narrative had formed it. But regardless, this idea of dying for your religion was pretty big. And now that and back then I was fully in it. I was like, yeah, oh gosh, if I was in that position, I would gladly die for my beliefs. And I still feel that way, but they're very different beliefs, and they're beliefs that I think are helpful to mankind rather than what I used to be into. And that's not a slight against anybody who is religious or anything like that. I have different priorities and different feelings than I had back then. But the whole martyrdom thing kind of started to feel a little icky as I grew up. Not Joan of Arc, but like just this glorifying martyrdom thing that happened when I was a teenager. So my complicated relationship was that she is considered a martyr, and she was a lot of the time kind of the poster child for that movement, along with some of the Columbine kids and some other historical figures. And I think After watching it this time, my opinion on her has changed a lot over the years. So when I came into this, I wasn't like, oh gosh, Joan of Arc, but I still in the back of my mind had some of those thoughts, just that because they'd been there for so long, and some of them hadn't been like fully resolved. I have no idea where I was. I was attacked by several children in between there. Uh, so I'm just gonna move on, I guess. Something about my feelings on her changing a lot and how I feel now. I don't know, but when I went into this, I wasn't looking for anything like that. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, the same. I know the Joan of Arc situation. It's just that same thing. And to an extent, yeah, there was a lot of it that I already knew about, and so it wasn't like this was treading new ground. But what was interesting is that this film just kind of covers her trial and the aftermath leading up to her execution. And I was not expecting this masterpiece of cinematography, this masterpiece of editing, this score that was just so amazing and mood setting in a way that I feel like we don't always get anymore. Sometimes scores, which even really, really great scores, can blend into the background. And some people will tell you that if you don't know the score, it's doing a good job. And I think that's true in some accounts. I think this one, and I don't know how original this score was because I don't know how much of this was restored or what the situation is with the if this was actually scored that was picked for the movie by the production team, or if this was something added later that they didn't know anything about. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that just everything about this film is a masterpiece. This film is almost perfect. And it's crazy because I did not expect going to this expecting to find a film that I adored this much, or that I felt so strongly about its place in the canon of films. But oh my God, it's just, there's so much that I absolutely loved about it. Starting with, I mean, I've already talked about cinematography, the way that they photograph everyone in this film, and the way that through almost all of it, it's right up on Joan's face, just right there, looking at every twitch of her face, every changing expression, everything. It's just right there on you, and that definitely evokes this uncomfortableness that she's definitely going through. It really makes you feel that almost claustrophobia that she must feel surrounded by all these men who are just judging her. And it also, when she laughs or when she smiles or when she holds true to her beliefs in that kind of claustrophobic shot, it almost makes you kind of amazed. It makes you, or me anyway, makes you feel the emotion of someone breaking through and getting through that feeling that we're all feeling in this moment, that she must have been feeling in this moment, that kind of breakthrough, that kind of resolve. It makes you feel the resolve within a character like that. And it's truly an amazing feat the way that they did that. And yeah, it's cinematography and the editing and the score all make you feel those things. As I mentioned, those are masterpieces. But I don't know how to say it. I didn't look up her pronunciation of her name. But Renee Genet Falconetti, I think is how you say her name, who played Joan of Arc in this film, gives one of the greatest performances I've ever seen in a silent film or in films at large. Just of all time, greatest performances at all time. Like, and part of it is because it's so close up on her face. She has to be giving this amazing performance in order for it to feel very, very believable and for you to go on that journey with her. And she absolutely nails it. Absolutely nails it. And it's interesting because you spend most of the movie just right up close on her, but once they go out to like execute her, you get this first shot of her kind of below the shoulders, basically, in this next to a guard. And for the first time, you see the scale of her versus these men, because all this other time they're all above her, so she's naturally looking up, and they are kind of lording over her. But when you see her next to all these other people, you're like, oh God, that's right. This is a child, and she was 19, I think they say, when she died. So, I mean, she was legally, by American standards and probably French standards at the time, she was legally an adult, most likely. But this was a youth. This was a kid who not only did all these amazing things in the military, but also is been tried and is being executed for her faith, for her for her for her loyalty to her country, for the fact that she refuses to stop dressing in men's clothing. Of course, she says it's because God told her to, and that you can feel how you want about that, but the fact is she should be able to, no matter what her reason is. And the fact that this patriarchal society, which thank God we're not in a thank God we're not in a and this is English. This is the language I speak as a native speaker. This is my native language, English. Thank God we're not in that kind of society anymore. Wink. That's where the joke was supposed to be going, but I just fumbled it so righteously. So, kind of where I come out on this, on Joan of Arc in general, and kind of this film, but where this film brought me on Joan of Arc in general, is that it doesn't matter if she was a mentally ill girl or a girl who is legitimately close to a deity. It doesn't matter why she wore men's clothing. It doesn't matter what country she comes from. The fact is, she was killed because some men didn't like those things about her. And maybe this isn't specifically an attack on men or anything like that. There's men on that jury, and they tortured her and humiliated her, and treated her like she was nothing. And in the end, because she stuck to her beliefs and to who she was, she got killed for it. So it doesn't matter why she did those things. The important thing to notice, to see here, is the way she was treated and the injustice that she was given. Well, luckily, she's been canonized as a saint. She's been she's recognized all over the world as someone who was unjustly treated. So it's not a fight that we still have to fight with her, but it is an important lesson. It is an important story that I think we all need, regardless of what you believe, regardless of what you believe was going on with her, because it doesn't matter. It's an important story that we should all see. And if you have not seen The Passion of Joan of Arc from 1928, go watch it. It's a masterpiece. It also, just as a little side tangent here, oh gosh, my head hurts real bad. Just as a little aside here, as I was watching it, I don't know if this was intentional on the part of Sinead O'Connor, but so often the movements and the framing of this movie reminded me of Nothing Compares to You music video by Sinead O'Connor. And part of it is that it's the shaved head girl, woman, in a very close up shot, moving their head a lot, looking sad. There's a lot of that, but I went and watched that video afterward, and I was like, no, I think I see it. I don't know that it was intentional. I feel like we would have heard about it if it had been intentional at this point, but it feels a lot of that. And there's in a lot of ways, Sinead O'Connor is similar to Joan of Arc in the way she was treated by the society for doing things that she should not have been persecuted for, honestly, for taking brave, bold stands against a against a legitimate threat. But that's where I'm going to leave The Passion of Joan of Arc for right now. Have you seen that movie? Have you seen The Passion of Joan of Arc? How do you feel? Do you feel the same way I do? Talk to me in the comments. If you haven't seen it, have I convinced you to watch it? Please let me know. Thank you. We're moving on to the next movie, which is Breathless by Jean-Luc Godard. And this is the first of 3 French New Wave films that we're going to talk about here. Now, I've seen French New Wave films. I've seen movies by Jean-Luc Godard. This was my first watch of this list so far. Was Breathless from 1960. And 1960 is a really good year. I've come to find out just from this and just from in general. One of my favorite movies of all time, The Apartment, came out in 1960. The Housemaid, which I talked about during my Korean cinema week, came out in 1960. Psycho and Peeping Tom, both huge inspirations in the slasher genre, came out in 1960. It was a big year, 1960 for films, and this one of the most iconic French New Wave films of all time came out, which was Breathless by Jean-Luc Godard. Now, if you don't know what the French New Wave was, it was and to a lot of people who are watching this are going to find a similarity to it, to the kind of the what I've always called the indie new wave, but it's I don't think there's an official title of that, but just like in the 90s, this rebel with a movie camera type filmmaking, which was just a bunch of people started making movies their own way, and a lot of new directors who hadn't made anything before just started making their own films because, heck, let me share my art. It's very similar to that, but basically French New Wave, or just New Wave if you're from France, was artists who wanted film to be looked at the same way you would look at a painting, the same way you would look at any piece of art. And so they started making their films specifically as pieces of art. Now, I'm sure they believe this because I know that they had a lot of influences and they have a lot of people that they believe that they loved as well. I think that the intention of making it as art is the important thing here. I don't think that films became art at this moment. I think some people will probably tell you that. I think all films are art. I think that every film, I think the worst film you've ever seen is art. I think that as Martin Scorsese would say, the amusement park movies are art. I don't think that just because they are not as profound as you would want them to be doesn't make them not art. All film is art. All filmmakers are artists. They may not prioritize certain elements that you would like for an artist to prioritize, but filmmakers are artists, and I just need to say that. So anyway, Breathless. It's not the first New Wave film. It is the first by Godard, but it's not his. It's not the first New Wave film, but it is probably the most famous, probably one of the most influential. And I could see that in this film. I could see a lot of the ways that this film was incredibly influential. I do think that there are better Godard films. I think there are better French New Wave films. This one did not work for me as well as some of the other ones, but that's from a person who saw this for the first time in 2025. It's not from a first person who saw it early on in my film career or saw it back when it came out. It's someone who saw this movie for the first time after I had probably seen most of the films that had been influenced by this film. So I will say that there is that. I do think it's a great film. I think from a craft perspective, from an art perspective, I do think that he made a really great film. I do not like the main character at all, and that's part of the thing that makes me not connect with it as well as I would like to. I love the female lead. She's really great. That her character is really good and fun and interesting. The male lead character just did not interest me at all. And I think his imperfection was on purpose. He wasn't meant to be super likable, but he was so unlikable to me to not keep me engaged in their relationship, which is most of the story. So this film does not hit for me the way I'd hoped it would, or the way I think that it hits for a lot of people. I think if I rewatch it, I will find more value in it next time. I just was kept waiting to feel something for this character, this guy that we're following through the whole movie, and I really never did. And if I felt anything, it was ire. It was disinterest in his well-being, which, you know, is fine. I love a good character, the unlikable protagonist. I love that. He was so unlikable to me that I had trouble engaging with it, like I said. So I do need to rewatch Breathless, but I'm going to move on from it right now. Tell me how you felt about Breathless in the comments if you've seen it. Do you feel the same way I do, or were you able to overcome that hurdle? Or maybe it's not a hurdle for you. Maybe you liked that character in a way that I really didn't. But I'm going to move on to the next film. Another film from the French New Wave, which is The 400 Blows, directed by Francois Truffaut. Now, I will say this, having seen other Truffaut films, including this one, this was a rewatch. Although I hadn't seen it since I was a teenager, I think, probably. So it did feel like a new experience for me. I will say this, as a whole, Truffaut is probably my favorite of the French New Wave directors. I think other people might go with Godard, but on the whole, I would say it's him. And maybe it's because I've seen more of his films than some of the other people, but I do appreciate his style more than, say, Godard. And it's no surprise that I really connected to this one, even regardless of how I felt about him. But I'm a huge fan of coming of age movies, and this is a coming of age movie. You know, it's about this kid who's dissatisfied with his unhappy home life. He's dissatisfied with the way his teacher treats him. And I think today we would get him to a doctor who would diagnose him with some ADHD, maybe get him on some meds, and it might improve his quality of the quality of his home and school life. But there are a lot of real problems going on in both of those that medicine's not going to fix, because his dad is just this kind of this awful person to him a lot of the time. They don't really connect on a real level, but even just the way he interacts with his son and the way he talks to his son is not good. His mother, who is not only having an affair, and which he sees her having while he's skipping school, so they kind of have this mutual secret that they need to keep together, is having this affair, but only finds this interest in him as a means to keep him quiet about her indiscretion. And it's things like that that really helped me engage with this character and with this story, with this you know, his plight, because, you know, I didn't come from a super stable home. I did have a really great mom who's a single mother, but she worked all the time, and so and my dad was kind of an absentee dad, and so while it wasn't his experience, is not my experience, I do understand this unstable feeling of instability at home. I'll also say, as a self-diagnosed neurodivergent person now, I understand kind of his troubles at school as well. I recognize them from when I was a kid, and I was like, gosh, I wish we had known what was wrong with me back then. I might have had a better school experience. I might be doing something great today with my life, but regardless, no, I'm not. Except for my wonderful family, who I love, but and if I'd been doing something great, maybe I wouldn't have them. So sliding doors and all that, but all that really helped me connect with this character in a real way, and to really understand what he was going through and why he was making the decisions he was making. Now, they're not necessarily decisions I condone all the time. They're not necessarily things that I would have done, but I understand them, and that's the important thing, is getting across this feeling and a familiarity, at least understanding, to get you engaged with these characters, and that's really what Truffaut does in this movie that I think is really great. I think cinematography is really great also in it. I think that the final shot is really interesting and telling. I'm a big fan of final shots and final scenes in movies, which we'll talk about here pretty soon. But I think that there's so much that happens in the freeze frame. It ends in a freeze frame. The freeze frame that happens at the end. I think there's so much you can infer from what happens there. I think it implies a lot, and whether it's the artist's intention or not is irrelevant, because once you have watched it, your interpretation of it is really all that matters in your case. So I'm interested to know in the comments if you could tell me how you interpret that ending if you've seen this movie. But yeah, for me, this was good. I really liked it. Really had a good time with it. Because I think that it matches Breathless in terms of filmmaking, but just exceeds it in what is I think a better story with better characters and more engaging film. So there's that. 400 Blows from 1959. I did not mention that before, but this movie was always going to be a hit for me just because it was a coming of age movie, and it really did. It really hit for me. But I'm going to move on past this movie because, gosh, I'm ready to go lay down. We're going on to the final film that we need to talk about in the French New Wave, which is Cleo from 5 to 7 by, oh gosh, I listened to the pronunciation of this and I'm suddenly realizing I'm going to fail at this. Agnes. It's not Agnes. I know that. It's like Anye Varda, I think is how we say it. I'll learn. I'll do better next time if I watch another Varda film. But Chloe from 5 to 7. And this might upset my friend Dylan, who he did recommend this to me, and don't worry, that's not the problem, or that's not what I'm not going to say I hate it or anything like that. He recommended this to me, but he also made like a list of like 20 movies that I should watch in this, because we share love of French cinema. So I was really interested in some of the movies that he wanted me to watch, and there were a couple that he was like, you have to watch these. I just didn't get around to them because I intended to do kind of early, kind of the movie that got me into French cinema, some early French cinema, some French New Wave, and then just some other French movies that are really classic. And so and then some modern French stuff. So I had intended like this whole thing. I didn't get around to that because once I got through the French New Wave, I had like time for like one more movie. Well, I had time for two more movies. The problem is, and this is where like he might be a little upset, but not really, not real upset, but just like friendly, playful upset. Is that after I watched Cleo from 5 to 7 and loved it, and was thinking about writing a review, and as I was trying to write my Letterboxd review, I literally could only come up with two words, and that was perspective and identity. And I was like, this is not a review. And why can't I come up with better words? And why can't I put into words why I love this movie so much? And so I ended up doing like kind of adding some words. Like I ended up doing a review that says an incredible portrait of perspective and identity. I was just trying to get the film logged. And so the more I thought about it, and I thought about it all the next day, thought about this film, and I was like, I just want to be able to speak to why I enjoyed this film so much, but it's so hard for me to, it's not like just coming to me. I see these themes and I like what they're saying about them, but I just can't come up with it. So that next night, instead of watching one of the other movies from his list, I watched Cleo from 5 to 7 again, which is unprecedented. I've not done that. You know, he is my co-host on Frame Wreck over on the Dill Pickle Movie Network, and I'd say this all the time over there. I always watch those movies twice. I watch them once for the cringe, and then once for like the notes, just to make sure I didn't miss anything, just to make sure that I have enough to talk about. But I haven't had to do that for this because usually I can pretty well get a good idea of what I want to say and how I feel about it. This one, I was just like, man, I have all these really positive feelings, but I'm not getting to where I want to be. So I watched it again. And the main thing that I took from it is, yep, this is a masterpiece. I don't know. I think I'm closer to understanding exactly what it is about this film that I love. And I think I could talk a little bit about that, but I can tell you that it might take me a couple more watches to be able to put them into words. And I don't know if that's good, if that's bad, if that makes me seem amateurish or what, but I don't care. I'm being honest here. I'm being real honest with you about how I feel. And how I feel is I'm not completely positive everything that I love about this film. I can tell you a few things. I can tell you that that the perspective and identity, which were the two words that I kind of clamped onto when I first watched this, are the main things. Because the film, which if you haven't seen it, go watch it, please. And I hope other people find it as incredible as I find it. But the film, which covers an hour and a half of Cleo's life. I know it says Cleo from 5 to 7, but it's really Cleo from 5 to 6:30. But that's fine. I think Cleo from 5 to 7 is a better title. Cleo is this singer who, a relatively new singer, musician. She's a singer who has had 3 singles on the, like, put out 3 singles at this point. But she is gaining, notoriety. She's gaining a presence and fame from that. And people don't necessarily recognize her by face, and that becomes obvious as you go through the movie. And only when her name is said do people start treating her differently. And that's the thing about perspective. Is not only you're getting her perspective of trying to navigate through Paris throughout this movie, because it's basically her going from place to place, shot in basically real time. I mean, it's not 1-to-1, I don't think, but shot basically in real time as she's going from place to place throughout Paris, interacting with all these different people, and how she is perceived by the world around her, both before and after they know who she is, but also how she is perceiving the world as she goes through it, because she's also very nervous about this medical diagnosis. She had some tests done, and she's going to find out at about 6:30, which is, if you can't tell, is where the film is heading. She's supposed to find out that evening, what her test, what if she is bad sick or not, like if she is terminally ill, or if her illness is as bad as she hopes it's not, or if there's gonna have to be some major medical stuff. Like, she's nervous about that throughout. So she's going through this film, and we see her perspective, and we also see how her perspective changes as she goes through the film, because she starts out, I've seen people call her annoying. I don't think so. I think she's a little bratty, maybe, and not even in a way that's off-putting to me, in a way that's kind of she's stressed, and so like she's kind of acting out a little bit, I think, in some of this. So we see her going from there to kind of as she goes, kind of her perspective shifting away from who she is to everybody to who she is to herself. And so that is kind of the perspective that change that you're seeing there, but also identity. Like, who is she? Is she Cleo, or is she Florence, which is her real name? Is she who is she on the inside, and how does that affect the people and their perception of her? It's a very, very interesting um, through line throughout the film. And you know, mirrors play heavily into this, and both of those things, perspective and identity, are both tied into that concept, which I think is very interesting and cool. She meets up with all kinds of people she knows, some people she doesn't know, and their different shifting perspectives on her on her and her identity are incredibly interesting. But again, I'm not sure I can fully break down what it is about this movie that I love versus how I will feel about it on future watches or with more time thinking about it. I think that's a good place to leave it for now. But if you've seen Cleo from 5 to 7, what was your experience with it? Tell me in the comments right now. Just go down and type it in. Tell me, what was your experience with this? Did you have a similar experience as me, or did you instantly understand how you felt? Or do you feel like rewatching it would help you at all with how you feel about it? Talk to me in the comments about that, because I'm very, very interested. So that's Cleo from 5 to 7, having watched twice, meaning I didn't have time for anything else except for the movie I knew what I was going to do last. And I knew I was going to do it last because this is probably my favorite French movie. It's also the newest one on this list. And the movie means a lot to me. The experience around seeing it means a lot to me, and I'll explain that in a moment. But I'll just tell you what it is. It is 2019's Portrait of a Lady on Fire by Celine. Again, I looked up how to pronounce this, and it wasn't exactly right. It's Celine Sciamma, I believe is how we say that. Celine Sciamma. Anyway, regardless of how you pronounce that. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is probably my favorite French movie. In a world where Parasite doesn't exist, this is my favorite movie of 2019. It was shamefully not, and I don't know, I don't remember. I feel like I knew a lot of the behind the scenes on this before. I've forgotten it, if there's anything. For whatever reason, France chose Les Miserables as their pick for international Oscar picture instead of Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which I think is a mistake. But Parasite was always going to win that. I think this is the only thing that would have possibly given Parasite a run for its money that year. But 2019 is a really good year. It's becoming one of my favorite years in all of cinema because as I mentioned a couple times on this channel, once in Dylan's marriage story presentation on Cinema Soapbox, and then once during my my Korean cinema. I keep saying South Korean, but really, I really only covered South Korea, so that's probably why. Korean cinema 5225 week. 2019 is becoming one of my favorites. It's got at least 3 masterpieces in it, which is, as I mentioned before, very rare for me to consider something that new a masterpiece. And the fact that I have, Parasite is the only one that was on the day I watched it a masterpiece. A couple others, including Portrait of a Lady on Fire, have made their way into masterpiece territory. The importance to me for this film is not just about the movie itself. There's also some conditions around me having seen it. Number one, I saw it on March 16th. I believe it was March 16th. I don't remember. March 2020. I I remember going to the theater, and I was doing a double or triple feature that day because my family was in Kansas City visiting some relatives, and I was staying home because I had vacation that week because my mom had passed away a few weeks, a year before that, about a year before that. And so my sister, my grandma, and I were going to go to Missouri to the Ozark Mountains where my mom had requested her ashes be spread. And so I'd gone to the movies that day because there was no one there, or because my family was gone. I went to the movies that day, saw 2 or 3 films, but Portrait of a Lady on Fire was going to be my last film of the evening. And I remember I had a little bit of time between whatever the film was before Portrait of a Lady on Fire, because I can't remember the other 1 or 2 that I watched that day. I just remember, I think I watched 3, and I don't remember what the other 2 were. I just remember Portrait of a Lady on Fire was one of them, and it was the last one. And so I went out to my truck and sat in my truck, and had read that AMC, which is the theater chain that I usually attend because I have AMC A-list, and I think I must have had it back. Yeah, I had it back then. AMC would be shutting down the next day, so this is literally the last day that AMC's are open. And I also called my sister because we were not sure, because the pandemic was ramping up, and they were closing AMC's the next day because of the pandemic, and a lot of things had kind of shut down. And I called my sister, and we were going to take my grandmother to Missouri to spread my mom's ashes. And on the phone, right before I went in to go watch Portrait of a Lady on Fire, we decided not to go. We decided not to go because we didn't want to take grandma around to places where she might catch this virus that we didn't really know anything. We didn't know much about. We just knew that it was shutting down the world. And we didn't want to put her at that risk. So we decided we'll hold off. We'll see how this goes. We'll see how this pandemic goes. Maybe it'll be done in a couple months and then we can do it again. It wasn't. So we decided not to go, which was really heartbreaking for me, but it was the right choice for us. But it was really heartbreaking because I was just like, this was my mom's final send off. This is what she had requested, and we were going to go. Sorry. And so we decided we were going to go, and then I went in to watch this movie, and I was already in a pretty emotional state at that point. And then I watched Portrait of a Lady on Fire, loved it, and then left, and theaters shut down for a long time. So that was kind of the emotional side of what happened. And then I got to spend basically the 5 years since then, with anytime anybody asks, and they asked a lot during the pandemic, if you're in any film communities, they like to know, what was the last movie you saw in the theater before they shut down? And for me, I got to say Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which was an awesome thing to get to tell people, because I'm so jealous. Yeah. It's the last thing. That's the last theatrical memory I have before it opened up again, and I saw New Mutants, which I also liked a lot, but I think that's because I was just so jonesing for the movie theaters that maybe it improved the movie for me. I don't know. I liked it. It doesn't matter. So that was the last in theatrical film that I had seen since then. So I get to that's kind of that little trivia thing that I get to have forever. But it also has this kind of pretty emotional feeling for me. So I wondered if maybe the kind of having been primed for this emotional, my emotions primed to really feel, had been part of what made me enjoy this movie so much. And so I watched it again once it came out on streaming. Loved it again. Loved it probably even more. I think the next time I watched it, I marked it up to 5 stars. Like I was like, I don't know why I only had it a 4.5. This is incredible. And I've watched it 5 or 6 times since then, including this last time I watched it. And I discovered something that I hadn't noticed before. And it's something that's so blatant and so obvious in this movie that I feel stupid for having not seen it before. And if you haven't seen it, don't feel stupid. Only I'm allowed to do that. I'm sure you're fine. I suspect you did because I can't believe I never did. And here's the thing. I'll talk about it a little bit more because it's more spoilery. So I'll say that to the end in case people haven't seen it. If you've never seen Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I recommend you go watch it. It's just a beautiful love story, a beautiful time in the theater. It's interesting because On Fire has a lot of different connotations, and even the title Portrait of a Lady on Fire means different things throughout the film. At one point, there's a literal portrait of a woman that is on fire, and it's on fire over her heart, which I think is very telling because this is before they really get into they really fall in love, or at least before they know they've fallen in love. This is portrait of a lady an actual portrait of a lady that is on fire. There's also a portrait of a lady who is on fire. That is the titular Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It's one. I think that the title refers to all these things. There's also later an actual lady who is on fire, and it is the thing that what the portrait in the movie is based on. But I think that the film itself is a portrait of this lady who is literally on fire. I think that is also part of what the meaning is of this title. And then I go into then I think about like things like on fire means a lot of different things. It means literally set ablaze. It also means, very excited. It means executing well. It means a lot of those things. And I think a lot of those things apply to the ladies in this movie. The people that are the central focus of this film. And it also reminds me of my time as a religious person, which is when someone would be on fire for the Lord. That meant that they were so overcome with devotion to the Lord that is the only thing that they cared about, or that they could pay attention to, or that they made their decisions based on how much their devotion to this God. And I think that is also a part of it. I think we use that definition of on fire. It works here too. Those are just some things that I was thinking about whilst watching the film. But the thing that I kind of realized, and that's where I'm going to with this, and then I'll kind of end with this. So if you want to cut out now, you can, or I put bookmarks in there. If you want to skip to what's happening next week, you can skip now. But the thing that I noticed this time that I hadn't noticed before, and some people out there are gonna be like, yeah, duh. It's like I always make fun of people on the internet who's like, did you ever notice that in Home Alone the milk gets on the plane ticket and they accidentally throw it away, and so that's why no one noticed that Kevin wasn't on the plane? It's like, yeah, that's the whole thing. That's why it happens. It's because no one notices that Kevin isn't there because they have enough. It's like saying, did you notice that they counted the wrong kid when they were counting him during Home Alone? Yeah, that's part of it, man. Anyway, that's kind of how I feel about this now, is because it's like, yeah, that's the story they were telling. I just never noticed it. So I'll tell you. The book that Heloise is reading in this film, it seems to be the one that she had borrowed from, I've forgotten her name. Anyway, the other one, Nomi Marlant, is a book about Orpheus and Eurydice, a Greek mythology tale, a tale in Greek mythology about a husband whose wife went to Haiti, or went to the underworld to and he goes to fetch her, and they Hades agrees that if she can follow him out of the underworld, but if he looks back, she has to stay with him, or she has to stay in Hades. And then he looks back, and it's discussed a few times in the movie, but I never noticed the parallels between this movie and that, and that's the thing that really struck me on this watch. And I'm not going to go through everything that parallels with it, but it's kind of shocking to me because there are things that are blatant, very blatant references to it. When she's leaving the house for the last time, and Heloise tells her to turn around as she's leaving to see her one last time, and then they don't see each other again, and then it's like she's being pulled back into the underworld from her. That's a direct reference to the events of that story. And not only that, but later in the kind of the epilogue of the film, or the ending, we see that she has, gosh, I need to get her name. Hold on. Her name is Marianne. I also need to mention, just real quick to go back, that when she tells her to turn around, it's because Heloise earlier in the film, Heloise had said, well, maybe she's the one, that Orpheus is the one who, or Eurydice was the one who told Orpheus to turn around, and just so he could, he didn't have to rely simply on his memory of what she looked like. Like it was they were trying to come up with reasons why he would have done that. Did he make the poet's decision or the lover's decision? And so at the end, when she goes down and tells her to turn around, it mirrors that moment that she talks about that may have been the reason that Orpheus turns around. I also need to mention, so my favorite author wrote a comic book where the main character is actually the father of Orpheus, from Orpheus and Eurydice. That author has recently been credibly accused of being a sex pest, and it breaks my heart because he was, well, number one, for the things that the women had to go through, but also because he was my favorite author, and this is not the first time one of my favorites of something has done something horrible. And it really is, it's really hard, but it kind of soured me on even hearing about this. Like, I couldn't even listen to Hadestown soundtrack, for the musical Hadestown, because it kept reminding me of this just deep sadness I had for this. So when they first started reading that story, I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know. Am I about to be upset with this? Like, am I about to, is this about to ruin this film for me a little bit? It actually has fixed the way I feel about that. Like, now when I think about it, I think more about this, which is nice. Anyway, Marianne is her name, as I was saying before. Marianne paints a portrait, or paints a picture of, which she submits under her father's name, because women aren't supposed to paint the male form, of Orpheus and Eurydice, but like right as the moment he turns around, and someone remarks that, like, usually that is depicted before he turns around or after she has already been dragged back into the depths. And this is like that moment right as she's starting to be dragged. And he says it's almost as if they're saying goodbye, which I think is beautiful and kind of mirrors the way that they the last time they see each other in this movie, Heloise and Marianne. And one thing I noticed is that throughout the film, Marianne keeps having these visions of Heloise in this white gown, and then she kind of gets pulled back into darkness, or the darkness overtakes her. And then at the end, we see that is the dress that her mother brings to her right before Marianne is leaving, and has her try on. And so the last thing she sees of Heloise is her in this white gown. It's the same one that she had been in. The thing I noticed is that Eurydice in that painting is wearing a very similar white gown, and Orpheus is wearing this blue, like I don't know, something blue. It's blue toga, something like that. Whatever we want to call it. I have a headache and it hurts. He's wearing this blue, which not only is the color that Heloise wears basically throughout the movie, except when she's sitting for the portrait, which is green, but also the color that Marianne is wearing at that showing of the painting. Like she's standing in front of it wearing that exact color of blue. Last thing I'm going to kind of go over, because those are a lot of I'm sure there's more. I'm sure next time I rewatch it, I'm going to notice so many allusions to Orpheus and Eurydice. I just can't believe it took me this long to see all those connections. The last thing that I'm going to talk about before we move on is the ending, the very last scene of this movie. This is one of my favorite final scenes of any movie ever. I absolutely love it. I almost don't even want to break it down. If you've seen it, you understand, I think. But and there's so many things that it could be happening and I'll just tell you my opinion on it. I think that there's many interpretations of that final scene that can be done. I think that the one that I've always subscribed to, and it fits with the new information that has always been there that I've found, which is that I think that she knows that Marianne is there. I think she knows that Marianne is there, but she's refusing to look at her. And I think that now fits into the narrative with with Orpheus and Eurydice, because they said before, like, if looking back is the poet's choice, then not looking is the lover's choice, and she's making the lover's choice. She knows what's happening there. I also think that, there's also the fact that the music that is playing is what's reminding her of Marianne, and that's what's causing her to cry. But I think the important thing is that just that shot on her for so long, just that shot, watching every ounce of emotion drip out of her. I think it's just such a beautiful shot. It's one of my favorite things. And I think that I have a new interpretation every time I watch it, which is what's incredible about it. So even those two things that I said aren't the only ones that I've ever thought about, and are not definitely what I think about it. It's just such a beautiful final shot. I love it so much. And I think that and it sucks when this movie I love so much is ending, but that is such an incredible ending that it re-energizes me and keeps me thinking about that film even longer. But yeah, that's my migrained rant about all these movies. I hope it all made sense, but oh gosh, do I hurt. So I'm going to leave this for now, but let's talk about next week. Week 13. 13 is my favorite number, which is why I chose this week as the week that I let my friends pick movies that my friends want me to watch. It's Friends Choice Week. I am making a list, and I'm going to let that list, I'm going to have a machine choose at random which movie I watch from the list. I'm having one from not each of my friends, but from some of my friends. And I'm going to do it that way. It'd be cool if I got to all of them, but I just think I have too many friends that will want to pick. I have more of those than I have time to watch movies. So I'm gonna let them pick a movie each, and then I'm gonna randomly decide which ones I watch, and then I'm gonna report back to you with what I think about those movies. I'm gonna go lay down now. Talk to me in the comments. What are your favorite French movies? What are if you were my friend or are my friend, what movie would you suggest that I watch? And you are my friend because you're here. And hi, I'm Matt. If we haven't met, what's your name? Okay, well, we're friends now. Tell me what you would like me to watch in the comments. Au revoir.